Here from Dr. Jonathan Glass. Now, for those of you that don't know, I've heard rave reviews about Dr. Glass from the team around the world. And today he's going to be talking about the liver's secret weapon and unlocking the power of glutathione. Now, you may or may not know this, but Jonathan's also the author of a book called The Total Life Cleanse. So he is actually an acupuncturist as well as a naturopath, and he's going to enlighten a lot of us with some knowledge that we need to know about this amazing molecule called glutathione. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand the call to Jonathan Glass. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Michael. Happy to be here. Thank you so much. So tonight, I really wanted to talk about the liver because of the amazing impact that glutathione has on the liver. So I'm going to talk about the liver, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how glutathione impacts the liver and the best source of glutathione in order to support the liver. So the liver, most people know, but some people don't know, the liver sits right on the right side of the body, right sort of underneath the right ribs, and it is an amazing organ. It is probably the most remarkable organ that we have in one sense. It's the only organ that can be regenerated. You can cut the liver in half and it'll grow back. So it's such an important organ that it can do that. So some of the functions of the liver are, one of the main functions of the liver is detoxification. Detoxification of chemicals, heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides. There's over 100,000 chemicals in the environment. Only 20,000 of those chemicals have actually been tested for human safety, and they've never been tested synergistically. And these days are finding in the umbilical cord anywhere from 200 to over 1,000 chemicals of even just a newborn baby. So the liver, its function has different phases. Phase one, it sort of extracts the toxin from the food or in the blood, and then phase two, it breaks it down in such a way that the body can carry it out through the bile into the intestines. So that's another thing that the liver does. It's really, really important. It creates bile, and the bile actually comes from broken down red blood cells called bilirubin. Turns into transforms, turns into bile. That bile goes into the gallbladder, and it carries toxins from the liver into the intestines. The bile has a very important function also of lubricating the intestines. So many times when people are constipated or bowel issues, it's actually because the bile is too sludgy or too thick, and a person is not making, the liver is not able to make enough bile in order to lubricate the intestines. Another thing that the liver does is that it stores sugar. So for example, if we're busy throughout the day and our blood sugar goes low, one of the things that happens is the adrenals will kick in, stimulate the liver, and then it'll stimulate the liver to release sugar into the blood to give energy to the cells and to the brain. So that's really important. It also stores iron. And that's also really important because obviously iron, in one sense, is the most important mineral because it's that mineral that helps the hemoglobin attract oxygen and carry oxygen to all the cells. And we're going to make a connection with that and glutathione in just a little while. One of the things that's really interesting is that in our modern times, most people in a year get more iron than we're supposed to in an entire lifetime. And that partly is because so much of our food is inappropriately fortified with forms of iron, non-heme iron, in forms that are very difficult to break down and utilize. And so it gets stored in the liver, which adds to oxidation and toxicity in the body. So those are some of the main functions of the liver. Now, the other thing is that when we eat food, the food goes into the stomach and then it gets broken down to some degree. Then it goes into the small intestine. And the small intestine has these little villi and microvilli, which are like roots of the tree, the internal tree. It extracts nutrients, passes on the rest to the large intestine. extracts those nutrients, sends it up through a vessel into the liver, and the liver has to transform those nutrients into a form that the body can utilize in order to create healthy blood. So the liver is so important. Now, how is the liver impacted? The liver is impacted, number one, by toxins. Again, by chemicals, heavy metals, herbicides, pesticides, cleaning products, so many things. Like we said, there's over 100,000 chemicals in the environment. Never before in human history has the liver had to work as hard as it does now. It's an extreme situation. The other thing is we probably heard of with Steve is that the wireless technology, EMFs, all these things impact the body and creates a tremendous amount of oxidation, which means the liver has to work hard to detoxify on that level too. Now, another thing that happens with the liver is that stress itself can create a tremendous amount of stress on the liver. So emotional stress, mental stress creates a lot of stress on the liver. When we're stressed, the body makes a lot of chemicals and hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline, epinephrine, so many different chemicals that the liver then has to utilize or break down and process. Every hormone that the body secretes, once it's finished, has to go through the liver, has to break it down into a form that then the liver can then break down into particles in phase 2 liver detoxification, and then take that into the bile and excrete it through the small intestine and the large intestine. So, for example, women oftentimes have hormonal issues, or they have all the estrogen that a woman makes, and men's hormones also. They all have to be broken down in the liver. Some of the problems that women can have with menstruation, with fibroids, with over cramping, emotional issues, which we'll touch on in a minute, all are related to the liver and the liver's ability to break those hormones down and excrete them to transform them into a form that's not harmful for the body and then eliminate it from the system. And I mentioned before, iron overload. Iron overload is a big problem these days. A lot of people may show in their blood work, for example, that they're low in iron. And what is the general thing that will be recommended? Just take more iron. Take a pill with iron in it. In many cases, although someone may temporarily feel better, what happens is over time, the iron creates a tremendous amount of oxidation, toxicity. The liver stores it. We also hear a lot about fatty liver disease. Fatty liver disease used to be called alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now we have a whole category, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And in a very simple way, the liver is very intelligent. So the liver is trying to break down toxins. But what happens is that if the liver can't keep up with its ability to excrete toxins, it will store things in the liver. It's sort of thinking, at some point when I'm not overburdened, then I'm going to excrete these toxins. But if that time never comes because we're being exposed constantly, and maybe we're eating a very poor diet, many people are eating lots of junk food, they're drinking too much alcohol, they're eating way too much sugar, especially corn syrup, and of course, genetically modified foods and heavy metals and chemicals and pesticides and herbicides, the liver becomes burdened. So the liver is intelligent. It will conceal those products in the tissues in a compartment of the liver, and then eventually it will seal it off with fat. And then the liver becomes fatty. And in doing that, for a little while, it's not a problem. But if that fat becomes more so and more so, then it starts taking away from the liver's ability to actually function properly. So one of the things, again, that I mentioned before is the importance of bile. Many people sort of think, well, what is bile? Why is it so important? The liver has these little ducts that go into the gallbladder that release bile, and it drips it down into the